The Mandalorian dead sector. Din Djarin accepted the bounty to hunt down 200 zombies and capture 2 zombie bosses. Grogu watched the data on the ship's display with curiosity. The Razor Crest landed on the ruined planet Gravensaven. The first undead began moving from the shadows, surprisingly fast. Din prepared his weapons while Grogu gave warning sounds. In the forest sector, the Mandalorian and Grogu encountered the first horde of zombies. Din fired steadily, and Grogu used the Force to help redirect the attackers. A particularly fast zombie almost grabbed the little green one, but Din saved him with a well-aimed shot. A greater danger seemed to be approaching in the air. Grogu clenched his tiny paws, ready for the next fight. Din and Grogu moved through the ruins of the former mining town. The shapes of distorted zombies emerged through the fog. Grogu partially hid under the armor but helped sense nearby threats with the Force. Din advanced carefully, always one step ahead of the dead. In a dark alley, they spotted a particularly large zombie with glowing red eye. Din recognized that the approaching giant zombie was Lord Noskul, the first zombie boss to capture fearless Grogu, leapt forward and used the Force to paralyze the giant's movements. Din prepared the trap, but Lord Noskul snarled and ready to attack. The battle began, and the air filled with the smell of metal and rotting flesh. Lord Noskul fled into the ruins of the collapsed shopping mall with Din and Grogu in pursuit. In the underground tunnels, light was nearly non-existent, but Grogu's glow helped with navigation. Several zombie hordes blocked their path, none easy to destroy. Din fired precisely, while Grogu assisted in mapping the area with the Force. Din finally trapped Lord Noskul in a carbonite capsule. Grogu watched as the massive zombie boss stared back at them with anger and pain. There was no time to rest though. The second boss awaited in the central cathedral. Din lifted Grogu up and hurried toward the Razor Crest to refresh. While preparing to find the second boss, another zombie horde invaded the ship. Din grabbed his weapons quickly and fought fiercely, with Grogu assisting using the Force. These attackers were no ordinary zombies. Something more dangerous lurked within them. The Razor Crest was damaged, and the cockpit shut down briefly. Din and Grogu discovered an abandoned base where local tech priests had left unique weapons behind. Din quickly gathered laser grenades and ion rounds, especially effective against zombies. Grogu immediately sensed that with these new weapons, they had a much better chance in the next battle. Din hugged the little green one again while they reloaded their gear. Din and Grogu approached the cathedral where the second boss, the Choir Mother, awaited. Grogu nervously scanned the area, using the Force to sense the surroundings, then readied himself for the tough fight, knowing this battle could be the hardest. At the cathedral's entrance, they slowly moved in, silent but prepared for hell. Inside the cathedral, Grogu's power grew stronger, and Din felt the little green one's determination. The Choir Mother unleashed a sonic weapon that shook the walls, but Din stood firm. Grogu protected them both with the Force while Din fired to break through the barriers. The fight was brutal, but they both knew success was only possible together. As Grogu meditated inside the ship, he had a disturbing vision, echoes of the Choir Mother's scream reaching beyond the planet. Din noticed the little one shaking and instinctively checked their surroundings. Something in the Force had shifted and Grogu quietly pointed toward the sky. A dark energy cloud was forming over the cathedral ruins. Whatever the Choir Mother was, she wasn't finished yet. Bambis began rising from graves that hadn't been there the day before. These new variants moved with eerie coordination, as if controlled by a single mind. Din fought them off with ion grenades, but Grogu sensed a link between these creatures and the Choir Mother. "They're not walking," Din muttered. "They're being pulled." The Force pulsed strangely and Grogu seemed deeply disturbed. As they re-entered the cathedral, the environment had changed. Walls pulsed like they were alive, and a low hum echoed endlessly. Grogu raised a hand and created a shield of energy around them, as faint whispers grew louder. Din took the lead, pushing through hanging flesh-like vines that dripped black ooze. At the center, a cocoon pulsed with light. Grogu pointed silently. It was the Choir Mother, reborn. Before Din could act, tendrils shot out from the cocoon, grabbing his arm and pulling him forward. Grogu let out a sharp cry and launched himself with the Force, severing the tentacles mid-air. Din stumbled back, his armor sizzling from acidic contact. "Not dead yet," he growled. Together, they prepared for the next assault. The cocoon cracked open, revealing a twisted skeletal figure wearing a crown of rotten tongues and evolved Choir Mother. Grogu levitated debris, using them as projectiles to buy time, while Din laid down suppressive fire. But the boss was faster now, phasing in and out of visibility. "She's not fighting alone," Grogu whispered. Shadowy figures danced along the walls, echoes of past victims. Din activated a beacon to draw out the entity's physical form, forcing the Choir Mother to solidify. Grogu focused all his energy into an explosive Force pulse, breaking the wall illusions with a brutal combo of flame and impact rounds. Din finally brought her down, leaving only a steaming crater. Grogu collapsed momentarily, drained from the effort. Din knelt beside him, protective and silent. Dragging the remains of the second boss to the Razor Crest, Din sealed her inside a reinforced carbonite slab. Grogu watched silently, but the Force still vibrated with unease. "Two down," Din said, though it didn't feel like a victory. The sky above Gravensaven rumbled with unnatural thunder. Something was still watching. They took off. But before leaving orbit, Din received an encrypted message from Grief Karga. "We've got another problem." The message began. "Those zombies weren't born on Gravensavan, they were summoned." Grogu's eyes widened at the word. Din sighed. So this wasn't the end, just the beginning. The new coordinates pointed them toward an asteroid field surrounding a dead moon rumored to be an ancient Sith testing ground. Din landed cautiously, while Grogu floated beside him, already sensing the darkness beneath the surface. They entered a massive stone temple carved into the rock. Blood-red carvings lined the walls, depictions of robed figures raising armies of the dead. "This is bigger than a bounty," Din muttered. Inside the temple, a sarcophagus had been cracked open recently. Grogu hovered over it, sniffing the air sickly sweet with death and rot. Din examined the ground drag marks, heavy, recent. Suddenly, undead limbs burst from the floor around them. Trapped in the heart of the tomb, the two prepared for another brutal fight. The tomb erupted with grasping limbs and guttural shrieks as Din and Grogu fought their way out. Din used his flamethrower and sweeping arcs while Grogu deflected incoming debris with the Force. One zombie clung to Din's back and Grogu force-pulled it into the wall with bone-crushing impact. The exit collapsed behind them. They were trapped deeper than intended. Moving through narrow tunnels, lit only by Grogu's soft glow, they discovered ancient altars stained with blood. Strange, undead statues lined the walls, humming with barely contained energy. Grogu reached toward one, and it reacted. Its eyes flashed, then dimmed. "Some of these aren't dead," Din muttered. As if on cue, one turned its head slowly. The reanimated statue spoke in a dead tongue, its voice like cracking stone. Grogu tilted his head, understanding more than Din expected. The entity warned of a greater master, the Rot King, a being that had transcended death. Din didn't wait to ask questions. He blasted the statue to pieces. "We've heard enough." Outside the main tomb, the ground was soft and breathing, like living flesh. Grogu floated above it instinctively, while Din's boots sunk slightly with each step. A howling wind echoed through the chasm, carrying the cries of 1,000 souls. A swarm of skeletal creatures rose like a tide. Din activated his jetpack, grabbing Grogu midair as the floor gave way. They crash-landed in a cavern beneath the surface, filled with broken bones and Sith relics. Grogu instantly recoiled. This place reeked of dark Force corruption. Din found a data chip embedded in a skull-shaped console. It played a corrupted hologram of a Sith alchemist explaining how to raise intelligent undead. "So they made them," Din whispered. "Not summoned in." Back on the Razor Crest, Din uploaded the data and traced it to an old Imperial lab floating in orbit near the dusk line. Grogu sat quietly, sensing a foul presence waiting ahead. As they approached, the lab's systems powered on automatically as if expecting them. "It's a trap," Din said, tightening his gloves. Grogu just nodded. The lab's corridors were clean, sterile, and completely silent. Too silent. Din's footsteps echoed strangely while Grogu hovered with eerie stillness. Inside one room, rows of stasis pods lined the walls, each containing a sleeping zombie hybrid. A terminal lit up and displayed one name, Rot King, in stasis lockdown. Before Din could shut the system down, alarms blared and pods began to open. Grogu raised a force shield just in time to deflect the first leaping monster. Din shot out lights to create darkness, then used thermal vision to pick off enemies. The hybrids were fast, but not faster than teamwork. The room was painted in fire and screams. They escaped the lab barely intact, just as its self-destruct sequence activated. Grogu, exhausted, slumped into his seat as Din piloted through the debris field. "One more boss," Din muttered. "But this one isn't flesh and bone. He's something else." Grogu opened his eyes and whispered a single word through the Force, "He's awake." Din didn't ask how he knew. The Force was louder now, darker. Somewhere deep in the black between stars, something ancient was moving, and it had seen them. The Razor Crest drifted silently near the edge of the Ghost Nebula. Guided by the final signal from the lab's black box, Grogu sat cross-legged, meditating, a green aura glowing softly around him. Din checked his weapons again and again, not out of habit but out of instinct. There was no chatter between them now, only readiness. They reached a hidden space station, partially buried inside an asteroid and coated in spore growth. Din docked cautiously, while Grogu floated beside him, more alert than ever. The air inside was thick, humid, and reeked of undeath. Along the walls, twisted corpses were fused into the metal, whispering in ancient Sith tongues. Grogu covered his ears. Further inside, they discovered a vast hall filled with corrupted clones of fallen warriors. Some wore old Mandalorian armor, others Jedi robes. Grogu reached toward one and trembled. It carried echoes of the Clone Wars, long forgotten. Din took a knee, bowing his head briefly, then rose. "They used everything," he said. "Even our past." They found the throne chamber, massive organic half-machine, and seated upon a biomechanical throne of bone and metal was the Rot King. His face was a cracked mask, his eyes glowing like 6 suns. Grogu froze. Din raised his blaster. The Rot King spoke without moving his mouth. His voice entered their minds. He spoke of balance, rot, rebirth, and decay. The Force decays, as all things do, he whispered. Grogu resisted the mental intrusion, teeth clenched. Din fired without warning. The shot passed through the Rot King harmlessly. He was more spirit than flesh. But the blast triggered a response. Dozens of undead protectors rose from the chamber floor. Grogu leapt into the air, sending out a wave of energy that staggered them. Din moved in a tight circle around him, blasting anything that got too close. It was war. Grogu began a long, slow chant in an ancient Jedi dialect. The ground cracked beneath them as the Force surged unnaturally strong through his small frame. Din could feel the power in the air. It was different now. "What are you doing, kid?" he asked. Grogu didn't answer. He couldn't. As Grogu maintained the chant, the Rot King lost his grip on the physical realm. His protectors faltered. Din used a sonic charge to blast the throne apart, revealing the dark crystal powering the Rot King's essence. "Now!" Grogu shouted, voice echoing unnaturally. Din fired straight into the core. The crystal shattered, releasing a scream that echoed across dimensions. The Rot King's body disintegrated into black dust, raining down like ash. Grogu collapsed, unconscious. Din caught him mid-fall. The station began to shake violently. Din carried Grogu back to the ship as the station crumbled around them. Fire, debris, and shadows chased them through the corridors. They barely made it into the cockpit as the asteroid exploded behind them. Din looked down at Grogu, still breathing but completely drained. "It's over," he whispered. "We did it." Weeks later, the galaxy remained unaware of what had nearly consumed it. Din Djarin flew low over a quiet forest moon, far from any bounty or war. Grogu slept peacefully in his cradle, his presence in the Force dimmed but stable. The Rot King was gone, but the scars, physical and spiritual, remained. Din sat silently under twin suns, his helmet resting beside him on the hull. Grogu crawled into his lap, yawning, and looked up at him with wide, tired eyes. "You saved the galaxy," Din murmured. Grogu blinked once, then reached up and poked his face. The Mandalorian smiled, and for the first time in a long time, there were no enemies, only peace. But deep beneath the ruins of the Sith temple, something else began to stolid and rot, and far more patient.